Now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for August 14th. Well, here we are, another day in the world, day 226, and we have 5 systems active at this point, 4 actually alive. Hurricane Linda, the strongest, now a Category 3 hurricane, while depressions Fred and 7L roam the Atlantic, and 16W remains unnamed as a tropical storm in the West Pacific. Kevin still there post-tropical. It's day 75 of Atlantic hurricane season. Fred is a depression over Cuba. Looks like it is going to be making a wider turn than previously anticipated, and 7L is expected to become a tropical storm soon as it heads for the Lesser Antilles and parts of the Caribbean. It is day 91 of Eastern Pacific hurricane season. Linda made a comeback and has strengthened considerably since then, now a Category 3 hurricane, and could intensify a little bit more as it gets to the higher end of that category. Kevin there, of course, still post-tropical, although that is likely to dissipate soon enough as well. In the West Pac, you can see that 16W remains without a name still, despite us having it as a tropical storm as well as the Joint Typhoon Warning Center having it as a tropical storm. It is expected to become a typhoon after passing south of Guam. And at the North Indian Ocean, there are no systems active, and that area of interest that we had in the southwestern Indian Ocean is no longer there, so it's all back to being quiet in this particular basin. No storms expected in the next 5 days. Moving on over to the Atlantic satellite imagery, you can see both 2 depressions there. Fred, that has gotten itself more and more into Cuba, should emerge over the next 24 hours, and then of course 7L, which did get that upgrade status from potential tropical cyclone status earlier, expected to become a tropical storm soon, and South Florida is also in the cone for that as well now. In the Eastern Pacific, you can see Linda getting its eye out there. Definitely been considerably improving compared to what it was 24 hours ago, and you can see the remnant swirl of Kevin in the north of your screen, but regardless, Linda is definitely pulling on a show as it has tended to in previous years. In the Western Pacific, not much besides 16W and the other shower and thunderstorm activity going on. A giant system that clearly is passing through parts of China and Japan right now, just a mess of cloud cover in general. Other than that, 16W of course is expected to pass just south of Guam, could be a typhoon afterwards. We'll see what happens with that, especially as the forecast has considerably changed since the last TWB that we did. And there you go, the North Indian Ocean, not much going on besides the average monsoonal activity, the Bay of Bengal thriving with cloud cover, and the Arabian Sea pretty much the complete opposite, so typical of what you would expect for this time of year. After all, activity doesn't really return for another month or 2. And then there's the 2 storms, of course, Fred and 7L. 7L entering the screen there, getting a little bit better organized, should become a tropical storm soon enough, and Fred still has a bit of reorganization to go before it can strengthen out of the Gulf of Mexico. It does seem like this place it can do strengthening. 60 mile-an-hour peak now expected with that before making landfall in Florida on Monday. Here the sea surface temperatures, 30 degrees Celsius continues for the Mexican coast. Other than that, it's pretty much 28 to 29 degrees Celsius. Some areas are only 27 there. Most of the Gulf of Mexico is now 30 degrees Celsius at this point, while the rest of the tropical Atlantic remains around 27 to 28 degrees Celsius. Although once you get into the Caribbean, that's more of those areas seeing those 29s. Some 29s and 30s also showing up in the Gulf Stream there, so interesting thing to watch there. In the North Indian Ocean, it's remaining around 28 to 29, although some of those 30 degrees Celsius waters are starting to return slightly, while the Arabian Sea remains 28 or lower, especially as you head towards Oman. In the Western Pacific, it remains the same as yesterday, where we were seeing those 30 degrees Celsius temperatures, mainly huddled near the Philippines and the Hainan Peninsula. Other than that, it remains around 28 to 29 degrees Celsius for the main part of the tropical Western Pacific in general. And of course, the Southern Hemisphere remains around 24 to 25 degrees Celsius for much of the basin. Here, the sea surface temperature anomalies. The Sea of Japan continues to cool down from its extreme above average temperatures it had. The neutral and still conditions continuing, although we're starting to see signs of that La Nina beginning to develop, of course, and then the Atlantic remaining warmer than average as expected. The Eastern Pacific, not so much. On this day in 1993, we had Hurricanes Keone and Fernanda, both of them Category 1s at this point. However, both of them ended up peaking at Category 4 status. Of course, Keone would cross over into the Western Pacific, while Fernando, of course, crossed into the Central Pacific. Cindy had become a tropical storm recently, and 15W would pretty much do next to nothing as a tropical depression before fading away. Of course, you can find more of our On This Day products powered by Cyclone History at the Twitter tag below on the bottom bar of your screen. Well, that puts us forward into the next names in the Atlantic. It is now Grace followed by Henri. Grace we are probably about to get. In the Eastern Pacific, it is now Marty followed by Nora. And in the Central Pacific, while Arby's may have the meats, they do not have Hone, and Hone is still not expected in the next 5 days. Moving on over to the Western Pacific, the next names still are Omaze followed by Kansan. We will be getting Omaze anytime at this point. In the North Indian Ocean, the next name there is Gulab followed by Shaheen. Moving on over to the Southern Hemisphere, the next name in the Southwestern Indian Ocean is now Anna followed by Batsure. In the Australian region, we're looking out for Patty and Ruby. And in the South Pacific, it's Cody. We'll be back for another Tropical Weather Bulletin tomorrow night, as always.